Welcome back to Light the Fuse, the only Mission Impossible podcast hosted by two men who have never graduated high school.
That's not true.
Oh, okay. Well,
we went to the same high school.
Oh, that's right.
I graduated. Did you not graduate? Is this news?
Oh my God. Sorry to do it.
I thought you graduated from college.
I did graduate from college.
But you did it without a high school diploma?
Yeah, it was sort of a Doogie Howser situation. Okay. Yeah. Welcome back. We're here for the second Robert Elswit episode, which we're very excited about. You're going to get some good juice in this one.
Guys. Yeah. He's such a great guy. He's so nice and funny and so humble.
Yeah.
And I just love him so much. And, again, this is a little longer episode, and we get some bonus content. I had to ask him about Paul Thomas Anderson. He's one of my all-time favorite directors. And so had to get him talking about Punch Drunk Love, and he tells a really great story about There Will Be Blood. Yeah,
it's very much worth it if you're a film fan, and in any sense of the word.
We also should set up, because we end up talking about ILM a little bit.
Yes.
And Elswit had his start at ILM.
Yes.
He, very early in his career, was camera operator and I think effects cameraman.
Yeah, he worked on...
And he was on Return of the Jedi, Empire Strikes Back, the original Star Trek movie from 1979, and E.T.
Wow.
That was work he did at ILM with them. And he, of course, downplays it
when
we bring it up to him. But just for context, those are some movies that he worked on early on when he was at ILM.
And he worked on Return of the Jedi with, one time, very briefly, Mission Impossible director David Fincher.
Oh. Yeah. Because Fincher was also at ILM doing effects.
At the same time.
Yeah. Right. Yeah, so...
Yeah, we've got some great episodes coming up as well. We got an Oscar winner coming on the show.
Oh, yes, another Oscar winner. We've been very fortunate to get some big names, and it's another really, really great interview that we're very excited about.
Yeah.
And we will not reveal the name yet.
No, not great because of anything we did, but just jerks. To the... Yeah.
What's that?
It's not a great episode because of anything we did.
No.
But it's all this person. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a wild...
Really funny, and... I don't want to give too much away, so you already gave a hint. So we'll just say you'll be excited. You'll be very excited. We talked to him for a very long time.
Yes. So without further ado, let's get into Elswit, and we'll be back at the end of the show. Well, we always ask people who have done more than one of these movies, sort of, why come back?
Oh, because it's always a challenge. It's two things, I think. There's always something you haven't done before. Like, how do I do that? How do we get this figured out? The airplane thing was, God, if I hadn't had Chris Centrella, but just to figure out how to get the camera out of there and how to control it out the window and be able to shoot him.
How did you do that?
I don't remember. You have to look at the making of.
There's an American Cinematographer interview with you where I think you talk about having some kind of window built into the wing or something.
It's all lies. That's a lie. No, there was a window in the plane, and we used that actual window to make an arm that went out. And Chris corralled the whole thing with the visual effects, with the special effects people, and they built a very, very strong structure to support a camera that was a motion picture camera that was going to sit inside, like a space cam. One of those things that's aeronautically, it's in a bubble, so you can fly without any wind. Moving the camera around, and the distance it was to figure out how far away it needed to be from. We went out, we lined things up, and it's never exactly right, and so we had something that was very flexible. And of course, Tom, is cabled to that door, and there's a rig inside that plane that's like, it's an absolute truss setup with. It's substantial because you don't want him to fall.
Yeah.
Right. So he's really nailed in there, and but just to take off and land. And I remember I had an interview with, you think these things get out, but I remember whoever called me up from Variety and just said, "Listen, I know that isn't Tom. I know you didn't do it." I go, "What do you? There's footage of us doing it. What are you talking about? There's people shooting us doing it." There's like EPK of it. What do you think, they're faking all this stuff? That's him on the outside of the plane. How can you think he's not doing it?
Yeah.
It's so clear he's doing it. It is the strangest thing.
And you were on the plane. You sent us that picture of you.
Oh yeah, that's when we first got it.
Did you take that picture?
Yeah, that's when we first. Well, there's an area on the back. We're all in harnesses. We're all wired and all that. And they let the rear cargo door down. And so, of course, immediately Tom walks out on the rear of the car, and like the rest of us wouldn't even go near it. Or I wouldn't. And we're all, we're cabled and we're looking out, and we're like, oh my God, we're 1,000 feet in the air. You get to think about it all the way down. So we just, that's okay, that's Tom. There he is. This smile.
Yeah.
And that was our first experience on the plane. We took off a few times and watched, and tried to figure out where we're going to do it, how we're going to do it. That was our big, I think it was, were we in Spain for that?
You were in England.
We were in England when we shot it, but I think we were in Spain when we teched
when you
it or
tested
something.
it.
I can't,
Would it
because
be
that's where
okay
they make them. They make them in Spain
Okay.
someplace.
Right.
Yeah.
Would it be okay if we post that photo that you sent us? Is that all right? Or-
I'll have to ask Chris.
Yeah.
I think I
don't.
saw actually a different version of it posted on IMDb.
Oh,
it's like somewhat,
really?
It's on there.
Okay,
but-
it's probably okay.
We can ask Chris.
It's not from the movie, so it
Yeah,
probably
no,
doesn't matter.
it's
just
amazing.
So yeah, and you see there's a line on the cargo door. There's a piece of tape, and he's on the other side of it. That's the line you're not supposed to step on the other side. That's it. There he is. So tragically, unbelievably tragically, that same plane, not the exact same plane, but that model, they build them and then they ship them off to, and I think there was one going to the Turkish Air Force, and they were doing just what we were doing. They were doing touch and goes, and I think this was in Spain. And it wasn't the same pilot. This was his last. He was an English pilot, worked for Airbus, and he was retiring, and this is the last thing he was doing. And I would go up to the front and watch these guys. It's just astonishing. This plane is just amazing mechanically, so sophisticated and so extraordinary. But they were doing touch and goes, and they were. It was the same that model plane. It was go to the Turkish Air Force, and they had a fuel mixture issue that came out of a software glitch or something, and one of the engines shut down, and they were doing exactly what we did: taking off, landing, taking off, landing, and one of the engines either shut down or there was some problem. And the pilot made a turn to go back a little early, and he went right into a pylon, and I think half the crew were killed. Oh, it crashed. Gosh. And it's the same plane, right?
Wow.
Doing just what we were doing.
Yeah.
Wow.
And I think it was like a year later. And it just made me think about it. It is, there's no question, I think, that everybody who works with crews, you end up feeling like there's nobody who works harder. Right?
Yeah.
I've been with actors who don't do their off camera. I've been with actors who have people who not only run for them but stand for them, who kneel for them. You know what I mean? But Cruise is like, he's in great shape, but he's there before you get there in the morning, and he stays after you're gone. He works out. He's, there's just nobody harder working than him. Yeah. There really isn't. And he's also, as an actor, he won't do anything in a scene unless he approves not just of the writing, but he understands what everybody's doing and what his character's doing. It's how it sort of stays kind of real. Mm-hmm. In these essentially kind of crazy cartoon stories. He grounds you in some kind of reality because of how good he is as an actor. I worked with him years ago on Magnolia.
Right.
Yeah.
Right? And he was the same dude, same guy, totally committed to playing a complete jerk.
Yeah.
Right? He's not one of those actors who he's able to completely let go of his he doesn't have to he doesn't care if you don't like his character. He doesn't care if you're not interested. He knows he's playing Ethan Hawke and he's going to win. And he wants you to feel there's a certain amount of danger, but also he's a great comic actor.
Yes.
The stuff he does with Simon Pegg, that's all based on taking the Mickey out of Ethan Hawke, Mm-hmm. It's I don't know. He's a complete actor. So he constantly challenges you. I think if you're a director, he becomes your collaborator. If you're making a movie with him, he's your closest collaborator. That's all there is to it. I think Chris would say the same thing. The other thing he does, when we went to do the jailbreak scene in Czechoslovakia, and we had this beautiful 19th century prison, which was kind of V-shaped with 5 stories of glass brick windows that you couldn't see through, but they lit this place like an art gallery. And so all the cells were in these tiers, like four stories of tiers with glass bricks lighting them from the outside. And the idea was that he was going to escape from prison, and I wasn't going to really have to light it. It was extraordinary. It really looked like, it was the most beautiful light in a prison, right? And he goes on the original director scout, not the tech scout. We're on the director. He goes on the tech scout too. We went on the director scout. We went through this, and Jim Bissell, the wonderful production designer, walks us through all the different spaces and describes how in the script this room will be this room will be that, laying this all out for Brad and for me, and so we can understand what's going on. And at some point, Cruz comes up to me and he goes, it's all written as this is day in the script. Would you have a prison break during the day? And I go, well, I think this looks horrible for a prison break. It looks like an art gallery. And I go, okay. And he says, wouldn't this be better at night? What would that mean if you did this at night? I go, well, it means we can't shoot it in 2 weeks because I have to scaffold the whole outside and tent it. We can't shoot at night. We can only shoot during the day, and we have to tent it. We have to do all that. Oh, but you could do all that. Yeah. And he walks over to Granger and others. He walks over to the two other guys and Brad and Judge. Said, Elswit thinks we should do this at night. No, I don't. Yeah. He's sort of half joking.
Yeah.
But it occurred to Brad and to me that he was absolutely right.
Yeah.
That he was he's like doing our jobs, sort of, right? Of course it would look better at night. It should be 3 a.m. That's when prison breaks. That's what makes it interesting. That's what makes it exciting. So, and that's what adds, $180,000 to the budget. So you got to scaffold the outside of this building. I got to tent the whole thing in. I got to put lights outside, and I have to light the inside. I have to put fluorescents up everywhere. I have to do all this. So all these sort of original. Oh my God, it looks like an art. So I wasn't thinking about the movie. I was thinking about, this looks really great, right? He's thinking about the movie. He's thinking about what it would feel like if this was at night, and how different it would be.
He seems almost like supernaturally attuned to what the audience wants as well.
Yeah,
but
emotionally.
He knows, he's one of those actors who understands that the way you light something is a real direct connection to how an audience feels about what they're looking at. So he's the whole thing. So that's, you asked me earlier with answering a long question of like, why do you work on those movies? Well, I always learn something, from that experience and from Chris. There's always something that's so complicated and so expansive, and they give you all the tools if you don't waste them. You know what I mean? If you're not just bullshitting around, that if you can get it done, and he's a challenge, like he's demanding, he being Tom, is going to demand that if you feel a certain way about something, he's going to challenge you about it. If he wants to know why. Why do you think that? What's your version of this? Why am I not getting it? Explain to me why you think this is. The underwater thing was incredibly complicated.
Yeah.
It really was complicated.
That was supposed to be one shot, too.
Well, it's supposed. Yeah. The original idea was you'd never cut away, and it could have been done that way. But I think to build the tension and to show other things are going on, it couldn't really be cut that way. I think his original hope was that would happen, but the complicated issue was as the animatic developed. What was clear to us watching the animatic was even though you cut away, you're still sitting there kind of on the edge of your seat because you can't believe he's still holding his breath. So you don't have to do it, and I think it happened in the edit. You don't have to see the whole thing happen in real time. You can cut away and still believe that, because we saw that in the animatic. We're watching the animatic, and all of us are going, oh my God, like he can't breathe. And he can't take a breath, and he's holding his breath. And how do you... so I'm not sure where that happened because I'm not there for the editorial process, but I think they did a great job putting it together finally. But the hard part for shooting it, it was designed so we could connect all the pieces. So you could do it in real time if you wanted to do an edit that way. But the original visual effects guy on that from ILM, whose name I tragically forget, it was wonderful, because they changed visual effects houses in pre-production. So and he was from ILM, and I'd spent a long time at ILM shooting.
You started
rocket
at ILM.
Ships. Yeah, sort of.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Were you there when Fincher was there?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
I'd done way too many rocket ships, right? And it was kind of a button-pushing flunky. I can't minimize enough my contribution to those movies.
Okay, well, you worked on some...
Yeah, I know.
Okay.
So Dennis Muren was the great Richard Edlund, Dennis Muren, Crystal, all those guys are just brilliant. It was like being the dumbest guy in chemistry class in high school. Being there with those guys. Absolutely was. So, anyway, to get back to this, so looking at the animatics and the effects people and the stunt people were going, how do we move these actors around this giant? Because we knew we were going to do it on the big tank at Pinewood because it's actually big enough. But it had to be a green screen environment. They were going to build that set. It was such a huge set underwater. It's not going to work. So, oh God, I can't remember his name. So we sat there and we went, "There's no way they can't move him around the space, and there's no way. We're doing rocket ships. Yeah, we're doing rocket ships. Well, what that means is that if you look at all the Star Wars movies and you have the Millennium Falcon going at you at 150 miles an hour, and then you pan around with it and it goes away from you, it's not really moving. What's moving is the camera. Mm-hmm. The Millennium Falcon's sitting there rotating on its axis and maybe going up and down and doing all sorts of silly things. And what's really going on is the camera is on a long track and it's moving at the Millennium Falcon, which is only 14 inches long. It's moving at high speed and pans all the way around it, and then it moves away from the Millennium Falcon. And we right away knew that's the only way we could do it. So all the motion that they're doing where they're going around and up and down and sideways and turning, that's really happening. They're on various different rigs. Sometimes, Tom is always on something. He's got some connection to his hip, or there's, in the more elaborate ones, there's other stuff happening. But, and the wonderful Ms. Ferguson, I don't think there was ever attached to anything. I think when she comes into the water, she's just around him. But we knew that it was all going to be what they call transferred motion. So when they appear to be moving away from us or coming towards us, it's the camera that's moving. They're static, and they're rotating and turning, but they're not actually traveling in space, linearly. There's no two-dimensional part of this move. It's just them spinning and running. So figuring that out, how to do that in the confined space in the space we had to work in was tough. Also, there was a real part of the set was built. Whenever they touched something, there was a section, I would say maybe 1/4 of that donut set. I think Bissell built maybe 40 feet of it or 30 feet. I can't remember anymore. So whenever they touch something or grab something or pull something out, there's a real set there. Okay. But the rest of it is all artificial. We actually shot plates of the real set at different distances underwater, so you could get a sense of what it would look like if you were that far away from something, how much the water would change, the contrast and the quality of what the set, the color and everything else. So we made, at the end of the whole sequence, we made different, they may have used it as references, but it's all a computer created environment. It's a CGI environment except for the things they touch. And then in the centerpiece and all that, we had things spinning and went by them. And the hard part for me was figuring out how to light it so it looked like something that people don't go there, supposedly, but you had to be able to see it. So what could you do industrial? So lighting from underneath seemed to be the only solution. And it seemed like a nice way to do it because it's enclosed. You don't want to feel lights from above. You want it to all come from below. So we cheated that a little bit. And I had the great Pete Romano, the underwater DP, come in. And for a month while I think we were in Morocco at that time, he shot proof of concept with stunt people. So he free dove the shots that we ended up doing later on the hydro crane. So most of it was shot off a crane. But he, in order to figure out if this thing would work, had the stunt people R&D, all the stuff that they needed to do to get the actors to spin and turn and do all that is in the previs. And then Pete free dove a lot of it. And then when we got back, we figured out where the track needed to be, that the camera would be moving on, the underwater camera. We put a camera on a track and turned it and, controlled the head remotely. And there was straight moves, there was curved track, there were, each shot had a kind of different design to it. And then when he's on the side of the set, we had the hydro. And we realized that to do the visual effects, it would be really great to have a very big piece of, we couldn't shoot on motion picture film because we couldn't leave the camera underwater that whole time. And let as much, we didn't want to be reloading, we didn't want to be doing a whole lot, and also we wanted a very, very big piece of digital information for all the visual effects to work, and I didn't think it would compromise anything to do that. So we got, luckily, Arri had just finished the Arri 65, and I think we were the first production camera to use. They didn't have any lenses. They had like a 28 and then something else. So we shot the whole thing with a 28, which was fine, which we didn't struggle with at all. They were just in the midst of R&Ding it, and we had a very limited time. It could be underwater longer than 1,000 feet of film, but not a whole lot longer. But they were still working out a lot of bugs, but we were able to make it work, and it worked really well. It's the difference between Arri and Panavision. Arri is a camera company, and Panavision's sort of a lens company, and So Arri had this marvelous camera, but no lenses for it. And they couldn't get anyone to build them, probably because they were going to be so expensive, because the image circle had to be so big. So they were essentially, it was a 2 1/4. They had to make something that would work on a 2 1/4 film camera. And I guess Zeiss probably said, we need $1 million for every lens, whoever they go to for their lenses. And so what they did, which was a secret at the time, was just went on eBay and bought every old Hasselblad lens they could find, and then
Really?
rebarreled them. And if that's a lie, you can call me at home, Eric. But one of your guys told me that. Anyway, that's what they did. And they found all these Hasselblad lenses, not a lot of them, but some of them,
Wow.
which have all sorts of wacky problems. These are all lenses designed in the late 50s, early 60s. And it's not a bad thing. And they had all sorts of, optical vignetting and chromatic aberration issues and things. But they worked fine and it was actually worked out really well for us. It was certainly as sharp as they ever needed to be. And one of the problems with digital lenses, modern lenses now, is they're too sharp. But yeah, so that's how we did that. So
Seems fairly straightforward. Just kinda go in there.
it was a long process, but that's
easy.
the difference. No one else will let you do that. No one else will give you the time to R&D it. Nobody, because it's Cruise. It's him going, how do we do this right?
But
And
helps
then-
he's the producer too, right?
Well, yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, essentially.
Yeah.
I mean, he's going to go, I have to do this right. This can't be bullshit. This can't be half-assed. This can't be,
Yeah.
this has to be right. This has to be right. So who else has that control? Who has that power? I mean, I don't know. You have to go back to old-time director-producers
Right.
to control a movie like that. And it isn't like it's an unlimited budget, but it's like, how do we do this right? How do we make this really exciting? How do we make it compelling? How do we not skimp? How do we not bullshit our way through this? And at the same time, how do we do something that doesn't have to be exactly that? How do we find a way to do this that doesn't have to spend $1 zillion? So we can. What are the shortcuts? What are the ways we can save money with it? So anyway, that's going on too.
And he's also a big proponent of using film over digital. Cruise.
I guess so. I
pushes
mean,
for that, right?
he actually insisted that his EPK get reshot on film at one
Wow.
point. Yeah, I think he likes the way it looks. Everybody. I mean, that's the thing we've talked ourselves into. It's there's nothing wrong. I mean, digital can look close to looking like film, and it is a different quality. It's a different image. But I think he likes the anamorphic lenses. He likes the
Right.
way film looks, and I'm glad to keep. I always thought that was going to be an arrow that was always going to be in our quiver, and I'm sorry to see it disappear. And so it's nice to have that, the next thing I'm going to do is going to be on film because the director wants to shoot film. Yeah, I think that's kind of wonderful that he does. And it's still enough labs working and doing excellent work. And the way films finish now, which essentially, even if you shoot on film, you finish, you make a digital product for release, you can do extraordinary stuff with it. And it does have a quality. It just does. I mean... Sorry, everybody.
Was there a conversation with Christopher McQuarrie about how to change the look at all when you did Rogue Nation?
I don't know if we had that specific a conversation. I mean,
I love the way the skin tones look are just beautiful, really beautiful in Rogue Nation. I didn't know if that was
as opposed to Ghost Protocol.
Well, they're both great. It's just like
I don't know.
Rogue Nation feels warmer to me a little bit. I don't know why.
Maybe it was just because we were in Morocco for a lot of it. We were in places,
Right.
and even when we went back to London, I mean, I'm not sure if that was ever. I'd have to think through the whole movie again. I don't think we had a specific conversation about how we wanted flesh tones to look.
Yeah.
It's usually not a conversation I ever had. Usually you hear about it when you shoot tests and stuff, and they go, "I hate that," or "That guy looks horrible."
Right.
I mean, we went for a cold look for our wonderful villain in that movie. It was one of the great actors. What a great actor.
You're talking about for Sean Harris?
For Sean, yeah, for Sean. But when we I think when we captured Simon Pegg and tortured him and beat him up and stuff like that, and we put Sean in the cube later. I think that was the only time it got kind of cool.
Right.
And the night chase through the Inns at Court, that we did in London, where we were trying to.
Yeah.
There's these things are complicated to put together, but they're. I don't know. They're kind of driven by this overwhelming urge to kind of startle and excite and surprise, and all the sort of things that get factored into what I do are kind of about that, even though they're not as specific as she would like. We'd like the movie to feel warmer than the last one or anything. I mean, I don't think we ever have that discussion. The thing I was most intrigued about the thing that was a lot of fun but was really complicated was the opera sequence. And that was the other one I couldn't remember. Oh, I want to be tied to a plane and take off and land, and I want to hold my breath underwater and look like I don't have an aqua lung, and I want to ride a motorcycle 150 miles an hour without a helmet, and I want to go backstage at an opera and with a gun and beat somebody up 100 feet in the air. So that's what you start with, right?
Right.
So, and then how do we tell them? What's the story around those 4 events? So it was. I'm trying to remember if it was Jim. Probably was Chris who just fell in love with Turandot, or maybe it was Jim. I don't know. He probably played a lot of records. Jim's an opera buff, Jim Bissell. And the idea was that during this one particular aria, Miss Dorma, in this climactic moment where it doesn't matter what, but that this guy would get shot,
right?
You know, and figuring out how to do that and getting a stage big enough to recreate what the Vienna Opera looks like was the big deal there. And we actually shot a lot of it at the Vienna Opera, but just did plates and never went on stage at the real Vienna Opera to shoot. I don't think, except to do blue screen work, I think. But we shot the outside and we shot the lobby and stuff like that.
This crazy establishing shot inside of it, where it's like
this
really wide lens.
Yeah. It's probably a 30, and we go up like this. Yeah,
it's beautiful.
It's a wonderful place to work, and they were so nice to us. Well, that was one of the great thrills for me. You know, when you do what we do, you get to go scout all these places. You know, if you're shooting a film in New York, you get to go to all these apartments you'd never be able to afford to live in. You know, you get to see all this stuff. And one of the great thrills of that movie was I got to go backstage at the Royal Opera in London and the and the Vienna Opera, and just wander backstage and take pictures during performance.
Wow.
Which, God, I don't think it's amazing when I think about it. And everybody thought I was doing something. I mean, people didn't know I knew who I was, but they were treated me like I should, like, oh yeah, that's fine. You know, nobody said. Everybody was like, hi, can we help you in some way? And I took all these shots of people, all the backstage people at the Vienna Opera, and I later sent them pictures of them at work and stuff like that. I don't think anybody probably had done that for them long. Anyway, but it was kind of a joy, and I got to see some things I'd never, and just to be backstage and watch that go on and see the mechanics of opera production and the people who ran that show. There's a wonderful woman who was who was the stage manager at the Royal Opera, who was just fantastic. And you see how that stuff is done, and I was just in awe. It was just fantastic. And they brought a guy, because the actors who were in Turandot, it's going on too long, isn't it?
No, not at all.
The actors who were playing the roles in Turandot were young opera singers. They knew they were going to be singing to playback, and it wasn't going to be them. But they brought in this marvelous man who was an assistant director and associate director, I can't remember which, and of course I'd have to look up his name again, I don't remember, who directed them. Because they had to create a real version of Turandot on stage that we could photograph. And he did what I never imagined you would ever do. He walked with the music, with a guy on a piano, playing the music. He gave these young actors who'd never played these roles, these young singers, every single emotional beat of the scene. Here's where you turn, here's where you look, this is where you feel this is where you feel that, here's where you're separate. And he blocked it all out, walked them through it, and gave them their absolute, the emotional life of the character from beat to beat, from a musical beat to beat. It was great. Anyway, so that's how he put it together. So it was the most rock solid thing we had. It actually was. Everything else, we had no fucking idea how to do. So to go backstage and figure out how to move Tom Cruise from sneaking in, going across the stage, scampering around, going up to that place, finding the whole thing out. It was kind of not carefully storyboarded, and we didn't really work it out ahead of time in the way we should have, because we didn't have enough time. Because we had, getting on those beams, and I had to put a crane, Chrissy put a crane on top of a scissor lift, so we had a 50-foot techno on top of a 50-foot scissor lift and 80 feet in the air. And
we love that fight with the tall guy.
Yeah, it doesn't, the guy. And so those things don't happen. It doesn't happen quickly, right? It doesn't happen. And I always knew in the back pocket, because I had the guys who were the lighting directors, and I think he was the lighting director for the Royal Opera, I'm not sure. But I had guys who did this light the stage. On the other side, the real stage is in relation to the backstage. They lit the opera. All right, I had to light the area around it, and I had to change some of it because it couldn't work for us because there were too many shadows in places and stuff. But essentially, they laid it in the way they would light an opera, and they had all their equipment and all that. And then I just kind of whatever I needed to do to tweak certain beats of it. But I knew that was sitting there, and the easiest thing for us to do was going to be to go out and turn that on. Because we have to figure that out. That guy had figured it out.
Right.
And we knew where everything was, and I'd watched it, and I'd seen it. So everyone was a little worried because we'd spent so much time backstage when we were going to get to the opera. And my whole line during this whole period was everybody was all excited about the opera. I hate to say it, Jim, I always wanted to do an opera. Just costumes, everything was like so exciting. I went, the whole fucking scene is backstage.
Yes.
Forget the opera. Da 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 da.
Right.
But, you can say that. But anyway, so we've managed to probably go 3 days over backstage, and then we had like 9 minutes to do the opera. But because it's a little better than that. But because they were so together, and they were so locked in, it went really. Once we got out of the backstage part and started shooting the pieces with the opera, it went relatively quickly, very quickly, and we made up the time.
There's a shot that's backstage that I wanted to ask you about because it's like Ethan Hunt and Ilsa are going up the spiral staircase and there are guys down below. It's just deep focus. I mean, it's beautiful.
This is perfect for a radio.
No, it's just yeah, you can imagine this on the radio. No, it's just a very wide lens looking straight down.
I mean, it's just a beautiful shot. You're looking down,
you get
way down below. And
you get a
anamorphic lens flare.
Yeah, you get a fair amount of you get a fair amount of depth of field when you do stuff like this.
It's a beautiful.
They're looking for them as they run away. Yep.
Yeah, love that.
You look at that shot and go, yeah, that's pure Elswit. Right?
No, I don't think that at all. I don't. I just don't. I mean, lots of times things just present themselves, and other times they grow out of storyboards, and sometimes they grow out of rehearsals, and Chris is always, the great thing about Chris is he's incredibly flexible about, that's better, or let's do this, or let's do that.
Right.
There was one specific thing he had in mind. He always wanted to talk. He always talked about. He wanted when you meet Ilsa. When you see her for the first time, he wanted her leg. He wanted the gun pointing out of the window, and he wanted her shape. Where she's aiming the gun, you wanted to see her leg, and those are that's a wonderful key image that he had in his head.
Yeah.
So we do things like that from time to time, certainly. Yeah.
Well, you are the most humble genius I think we've ever talked about.
Oh, stop it!
But could you point out a shot from each Mission Impossible movie that you're really proud of?
Not really. No, I can't think of anything. Well, you should ask me that a long time. I don't know. It's been so long since I've said. I don't know. I mean, there's lots of. It's not like I'm not proud of them. It's just that it's such a collaborative way of working in the movies. It's not like, I did this. It's just some people could say that. I suppose.
I know, but you.
It's not. It's never that. It's never. I came up with this. You know what? I will say that it and maybe someone will call me a total liar, but I thought I kind of came up with the idea of going out the window with Tom and opening it up to anamorphic.
Yeah.
And then
to IMAX.
And it goes out and
it goes up and goes down. It was a tricky thing to do.
We felt vertigo.
You're supposed to.
I mean, it was amazing.
Yeah, you're supposed to. But I mean, directors really, they leak into your movie no matter what. Nobody stands there and goes, "What do I do now?"
Right?
Yeah.
You're always working. If you have a great collaborative relationship and things are going well. Everybody contributes. I can't really take the credit. You know what I did? There was on Paul, the movie I did with Paul, Daniel movie, There Will Be Blood. Yeah. And you go through that whole process, and it seemed it wasn't a troubled shoot, but it was a difficult shoot. There was a lot of stuff going on, and it was it wasn't a joy. But it was really creative and wonderful, and it was a great experience, and went through the whole thing. And the finish on it, the post on it, because it's again it's film. It's Paul insists on photochemical. I tried to show him some digital fixes on something, and he just said no, I don't want to do it. So we're not doing that. And okay, so we just finished it photochemically. There's no sleight of hand, and there's a few visual effects, adding oil wells and stuff like that. But I never saw the movie as an audience sees the movie. Because when you're doing post, you guys know this, you're sitting there and you're watching edits, or you go to the lab and you're looking at the movie, and you're constantly watching it for what your work is at that moment, whether you're timing it or, it's like you never enjoy the movie. You never sit back and forget about you and see it the way an audience sees it. And about a year later, when I was on Mission, they had a screening of There Will Be Blood at a place in London called the Roundhouse, which is this marvelous venue for music and other stuff, where they screen the movie with a live orchestra. And what's his name, the composer? Johnny was playing second violin. They're all wearing, the whole orchestra is a young orchestra. They're all wearing kind of suits and ties and looking nice. And Johnny Greenwood's wearing T-shirt and jeans. And he's playing second violin. He's sitting there. And they show the movie, they do this now a lot, where they show, without the music track. So the music's played live by an orchestra. And there was a woman who played the Brahms violin concerto, the piece that's a little truncated in the when they ignite the well. When they start the well up and all that. And it was overwhelming. And you sit at these tables with other people, and if you sit on the floor of this space, and everybody has wine, and it's like a dinner. It's like you're in your living room, and you're at a round table with 8 or 9 or 10 other people, and the whole floor is filled with people, and people who love the movie. Probably a lot of them had seen it. And I sat there, and for the first time, after about 3 glasses of wine, I felt I was really I'd forgotten. I was watching the movie. For the first time, I was really reacting to stuff that I'd forgotten. And then I was a little overwhelmed by it. And I just was, in a way that I didn't expect. I was moved by it, shocked by it. It had an enormous impact on me. Wow. In a way that it clearly does for other people, but it never had for me. And at the end, and I was with my wonderful friend, Amanda, and I'm sitting with her, and at the end, half drunk, the lights come up. Nobody knows who there's no connect. There's nobody there who I know her at all. And I just turned to her and I go, you know what? I really did deserve the fucking Academy Award. and I kind of never felt that before.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Wow. Poor Roger didn't win again. It's like going through my head. So so that was it.
Wow.
You bring up. I have to ask this because Punch Drunk Love is one of my top 5 favorite movies, and Paul Thomas Anderson is so amazing. I just wanted to ask about. Yeah. I guess your process with him, and I also wanted to ask specifically.
I don't know what it is anymore. It's like a bad married couple.
Well, are you guys going to get back together?
I don't know. Probably not. It just depends on how he feels. I would do it again. I had a terrible time on. Terrible time. I shouldn't say that.
Inherent Vice?
Yeah, I didn't enjoy myself in Inherent Vice. It was like a really pleasant. I think it was a combination of me and Paul just not getting along, and I can't really. I can be as immature as him, There's just a level of that.
Lens flares that you have in Punch Drunk Love.
Yeah, well, that's really Paul. It's Paul going, I gotta love those. The anamorphic lens flare and how to get them to happen on cue, and it means we put Joker bars, which were they're little HMI lights, on C-stand arms, just out of the view of the camera. Yeah, and they'd uncover them at certain times and cover them up. Wow. And there's one scene, I think it was with Philip Seymour Hoffman, where we overdid it. And I think we reshot. But it's a subtle, all the way through that movie, there's just this enormous interest in color and design, and in a way that is really, the production design, I'm trying to remember, what's this? Anyway, at the beginning, here's a great Paul. Here's Paul. The beginning of that, and Paul's. We know we're going to do the blue suit. It's kind of stolen a little bit from A Woman Is a Woman, the Godard movie. Jean-Claude Briolet wears a blue suit. Paul loved the suit, and we looked at the movie. We got a print of the movie from the DP, the great Raoul Godard, who I think just passed away. And it's just an extraordinary movie in every way. And anyway. But the production designer and I were trying to talk Paul into, well, you know what? What can his space not just be white? Can it be like, can we paint the wall something else? And we did tests where he painted the outside, his space, his warehouse space. Yeah. What if the gray wall in the background had a color? What if you're thinking of all this through, and he just instinctively, this is a guy who's never been to film school and not design class or anything like that. He just instinctively, it just seems wrong to me. I just want everything to be I want the only color in the movie to be the blue of Adam's costume and the various colors that Emily wears. And I was going, why not? And then when I started seeing tests, and I realized it's figure ground. It's like the whole movie is essentially a background for those two actors, and colors that they wear. And Mark Bridges' extraordinary color design for Emily, and of course this blue suit, which I think he made like 10 of, and we shot 10 different shades of blue. Until Paul finally picked the one he liked. And then that figure ground thing, that whole idea that the whole film we'd paint everything white. We'd avoid every single color we could. We painted the walls white in his apartment. We painted the exterior of the supermarket that he runs past white. We painted everything white or gray or black, so that the only colors you'd see and you wouldn't feel manipulated by it. That you just feel that this is because what the movie was it was a fantasy. The movie took place as a fairy tale. It had to feel that way, and to take these horrible, banal, ugly locations in the San Fernando Valley, where Paul loves, and feel the magic of that, meant changing them in a way that they really just became this marvelous. And the one way to do it was to simplify the color palette and just go white, gray, or black, and make everything about Emily's costume. And there are a few places where we don't do it. And the big change would be Hawaii.
Yeah.
You get to Hawaii, and it becomes a sort of different. All of a sudden, you're into the warmth of the locations we picked and the places we went. But that Adam's world is this monochromatic universe that he lives in, which is a real reflection of who he's playing. Who's that guy, and that Emily brings him out of that, and that at the end, it's a really loving, caring, emotionally moving film.
Yeah.
And I think it has a lot to do with the way we designed it.
Yeah.
Just one.
Yeah, sure.
Sorry, one last quick question about
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
Did you put a light on top of an 18-wheeler driving out of there?
Yeah.
When they come out of the restaurant
there's an electrician up there too, which is not a good idea. And I think he's strapped down.
crazy.
I hope. I can't remember. But
Every time I watch that, and I'm like, I think they put a light on top of that.
Well,
18-wheeler.
he actually has to pan the light into the camera.
Wow.
And then pan it off.
Wow. Cool.
All right, well, this is our big question.
Uh-oh.
This is what I do every time. Okay, ready?
Okay.
We want you to rank the Mission Impossible movies.
Fuck, I don't even know all of them anymore. I can tell you number 12 would be the John Woo. I mean, I like the De Palma. And I love JJ's a lot.
Really?
Yeah.
And in all honesty, I think that Fallout's probably great. I bet, but I didn't see it.
Oh,
I was
you
so
should.
sad. No,
You gotta go see it.
I'm gonna go see it. I was really sad that I couldn't do it.
They're showing it in 35 at the Vista in March.
I'll go right now. Okay. I'll have a personal screening at Paramount. But I really, I felt bad. I didn't want to, and it's kind of like I didn't want to.
Well, you know what? They just announced 2 more. So have you talked to
Well,
Corey?
they're sort of beating around the bush right now. I don't know. But it's a huge commitment because you got to go back. They're back to back, and they're
Yeah.
So I honestly would. I mean, I would not say no. I mean, and I'm free next year.
Well, for both of us,
As far as I know.
thank you so much for taking the time
thank
out of
you.
your day.
Oh, it's
This
a
was
pleasure. Thank
amazing.
you.
Seriously.
I'm glad. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
All right. Bye-bye.
Well, I think that went very well.
Yes.
What an amazing person.
Yeah.
What a humble, generous soul.
Yeah. His story about There Will Be Blood is so great.
Yeah. And it should be noted that the picture that will be up on social media by now.
Yes.
We were going to take it in a hallway, and he said, no, this is terrible light. And we went into someone's office, who we don't know whose office it was, just for the light. And so.
Yes, he was like, we can't do it in this. We got to do it out here. Let's go in this office.
Yeah.
You know these people? We're like, no, we don't. That's okay. And then we will post the picture from Rogue Nation. We asked him about a shot that was in the opera sequence.
Yes.
And, so we'll post that picture as well so you know what we're talking about.
And it's my obligation to remind everyone to like, subscribe, rate, review.
Yeah.
Email us, reach out on social media at LightTheFuse-Pod on all your favorite social media channels. And we've got a lot of great episodes coming up. Have we talked to them about what's coming up next week?
No, we haven't. Do we know what's coming up next week?
I think it
might be.
Oh, that's true.
We do have coming up Filmograph that might be next week, or it might be something else.
Okay.
But we do have our interview with Filmograph coming up, and then it'll be our very big interview with a big name. Not to say the Filmograph was not a big name interview, because those guys were awesome as well, and you'll really like that one.
Yeah.
Another thing I also wanted to quickly bring up that was crazy to hear that ILM was originally on Rogue Nation.
Oh, yeah.
And then got kicked off.
Yeah, we need some clarification on that. We will work to clarify that.
Yeah.
I wonder if it was just a budget thing, because they did such great work on 1 and 4.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to say anything, but I think maybe 5 and 6 could have used a little ILM
You
magic.
think,
You know?
And so you think, you wonder what happened, how they soured on ILM or vice versa.
Because you feel like they're part of the franchise.
Yeah.
We're working on getting somebody
important.
from ILM
Yes.
who worked on 1 and 4.
Yes, we're trying to get set up with him, and that'll be a great interview when that happens, I'm sure. Maybe we can get some clarification.
Yeah. I wonder if he worked on 5 at all.
Yeah. Oh, we will post the picture that Elswit sent us in the email. His first email to us, he sent that picture that you asked him about.
Yeah.
Where Cruz is on the plane looking out. So look at our social media, you'll see we will post the picture of that as well.
It's amazing.
It's so funny.
Well, thank you for going on the Elswit journey with us. We hope you enjoyed it as much as we enjoyed chatting with him. And we'll be back next week with lots of fun stuff.
Yeah.
All right.
Thanks again for listening, everyone. And before we go, another mission, should you choose to accept it. Please rate, review, and subscribe to the podcast on iTunes. And remember that you can follow us on Twitter and Instagram at LightTheFusePod and email us questions or comments at lightthefusepodcasts@gmail.com. If you'd like to watch the original Mission Impossible television show, all 7 seasons are currently available to stream on Amazon Prime. This message will self-destruct in 5 seconds.